In a historical anomaly never repeated before or since, someone infiltrated the Chamber of Flowers at the very core of the Holy Land. The man described himself as a worshipper of Davy Jones. And that man was Rox Diesebeck, a figure who built his entire crew through the tradition of Davy Jones known as the Davy Backfight. But not just that, because 1 year prior to the God Valley incident, the Rox Pirates and the Roger Pirates had an encounter at a currently unknown location in the world, which resulted in victory for Rox and bitter defeat for Roger. An event that is currently speculated to have been a Davy Backfight, where Rox won something or someone from Roger. I want to go back to the quote that started this video though, where Rox labeled himself as a worshipper of Davy Jones. Because worshipper, it's a very interesting word that's really starting to unlock the greater puzzle that is Davy Jones. This is not the first time that he has been mentioned. No, Davy Jones has been mentioned multiple times in One Piece before, and each time his name has been used in the context of a supernatural, almost godlike being. And the exact word being used in Japanese is suhaisha, which doesn't necessarily just mean worshipper, it can also mean admirer. For example, in World, Luffy has many of these admirers, but they don't necessarily worship him. Although actually, Luffy's not the greatest example because he himself is more of a literal god than any other character we've met to date. Either way, we need to be paying a lot more attention to past mentions of Davy Jones than we have been. If you read the Viz translation of the English manga, you will know that Davy Jones has been a name mentioned since practically the dawn of One Piece, with the first use of his name being in chapter 33, where Butchie of the Black Cat Pirates claims that we plundered countless villages, we sent many a rival crew down to see Davy Jones, which now, almost 1200 more chapters into the series, has much deeper meaning. However, it shouldn't, because Butchie didn't actually say this. One of the big issues with the early Viz translation is that it went very heavy on localization and took a lot of liberties with pirating language and even translation accuracy, choosing to casually insert all sorts of pirating words, concepts, and tropes in places that they did not belong. And this isn't the only time either. Davy Jones is such a well-known pirating trope that it gets sprinkled in a handful of times in early Viz, but none of those times are canon. And the first time that Oda actually wrote Davy Jones into the story is in chapter 306, where Foxy's crew members describing the Davy Backfight state, "The winner of each game gets to choose one crew member from the opponent's ship. That person will instantly become the loyal subordinate of the enemy captain and swear upon Davy Jones, pirate of the deep sea." And this is how you can tell the difference between a canon mention of Davy Jones and a whatever the crap Viz did. Because after having gone through all of these, a canon mention of Davy Jones refers to him in the context of a worshipped being, whereas non-canon mentions more of a throwaway yada pirate name drop. In the prior case, Foxy's men state that a crew member lost in a Davy Backfight must swear upon Davy Jones, and when commencing the Davy Backfight, Foxy tosses three coins into the ocean, which he states that according to traditional rules is an offering for Davy Jones. And when Foxy was first introducing the Davy Backfight itself, he states that there are, quote, orthodox rules to run the Davy Backfight, almost as if it's the pirating equivalent of a religious ceremony. I mean, yes, orthodox doesn't necessarily mean religious, but the language around Davy Jones, be it orthodox, traditional, offering, swear upon, it's all pointing in a very religious-like direction. And furthermore, allegedly, anyone who does not obey the rules of the Davy Backfight is said to go to, quote, Davy Jones's locker as a disgrace to all pirates, which very much sounds like the pirate equivalent of hell. There is an eternal punishment for not obeying the doctrine and the rules of the Davy Backfight, the rules of Davy Jones. And these rules may also be linked to the existence of devil fruits and the curse placed upon them as the price of consumption. As should fictional fruit consumers be submerged, then they effectively sink all the way down to Davy Jones's locker. No matter what kind of fruit, you could be a lightning, you could be a tree, you could have a rubber penis, or you could be like Becomes and not even use the fruit that you are cursed with. You know, I always forget that Becomes actually has a devil fruit. We've only seen it once, but we've never actually seen it, if you know what I mean. It's a turtle type Zoan fruit that gives Mr. Lion a very big, strong shell, but it is incredibly underwhelming compared to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles crossover with Raid Shadow Legends, as they are partnering with Paramount to bring Leonardo, Donatello, Raphael, Michelangelo, April, and Shredder to the game. This might be controversial, but Donatello was always my turtle of choice. Love the purple, love hitting people with sticks, and you're not going to convince me otherwise. But you can kick off your collection with Michelangelo by logging in for 7 days starting August 21st to unlock this legendary turtle. Plus, you can fuse Donatello, summon Raphael, Leonardo, April, and Shredder through limited time events, and very amazingly even challenge Shredder in the dungeon to earn the exclusive Chronophage gear set. And if players collect all 6 Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle champions, then you will unlock a super secret special bonus. This on top of the already endless amount of content, AAA graphics, and a cross-platform superb base experience that is Raid Shadow Legends means that you can and should download Raid through my link in the description or scan the QR code on screen so that you can immediately receive a huge starter pack featuring epic champion Tayrel. And you'll also get another starter pack after reaching level 15 featuring an epic Rector Drath. Plus, new players can pick from 5 promo codes for legendaries. I highly recommend Alice the Wanderer, but you can also choose to Hanorak, Tholin, Foulbeard, Green Warden Rurak, or the phenomenal Sun Wukong, also a good choice. And you can come find me under the name Grandline Review and join my clan. So definitely give it a go. The turtles, they are worth the price of admission alone, which to be clear, the price is free. But for now, it's back to you, me. And in the context of Long Ring Longland, all this sounds like is assorted crap flowing from the mouth of a split-headed fox. However, in the greater context of One Piece, we should also keep in mind that this is also very likely the reason why no one left the Rocks Pirates after Rox Dizabek won their loyalty through his Davy Back fights. For the most part, we're told that the Rocks Pirates hated their time as part of that crew, but none of them would dare leave lest they be punished by Davy Jones, a power that the Pirate King himself may have even had no choice but to honor. According to fictional pirate history, the Davy Back fight first began on the island of Hachinosu, quote, long ago. So long ago that the game itself is a myth in equivalence to Davy Jones. However, 48 years ago, the early makeup of the Rocks Pirates revealed that up until recently, Hachinosu had been a dumping ground where overflow prisoners were left to starve to death, and that they had only recently managed to build a sustainable society there, which is primarily thanks to the underworld emperors at the time discovering that there was a colossal deposit of gold on the island. So the underworld factions brought order to the island so that they could mine the sweet, sweet golds. And for most of the Rocks Pirates, their initial quest to commandeer Hachinosu was very gold related as well. Whitebeard likely wanted his share to send back to his village. Miss Buckingham Stussy needed money for scientific research. Golden Lion Cheeky, well, it's in his name. And others, many others. But for Rox Dizabek, his ambition was much grander. He stated that he was going to be the future ruler of Hachinosu and that his goal was to build a pirate's paradise. And while the discovery of gold, lots of gold, was a very convenient mechanism to carry out his plan, the reason why Rox chose Hachinosu to be his paradise may have more to do with its significance to Davy Jones. As if this is the island where the Davy Back fight started, a contest that actively worships Davy Jones, then Hachinosu is almost like a holy land for someone who is a self-proclaimed worshipper of that Davy Jones. In the eyes of Rox Dizabek, this island is the heart and soul of piracy. It is an extremely important symbolic location which is not a first for One Piece, as the location of the original Marineford was chosen because according to Sengoku, it was the island that existed pretty much in the dead center of the planet. So it was a very important symbol of stability, which is why Sengoku took great issue with a certain Blackbeard, claiming that he was going to sink it during the Paramount War. Very bad thing to say, bad man. However, the aforementioned heart and soul of piracy seems to spawn from a very dark and demonic place. As I could go over the legends of Davy Jones as we know it in the real world, but as far as he relates to One Piece, I actually think it's much more useful to hear Oda himself recounting the legend of Davy Jones, because that's what gives us the important context of how Oda sees Davy Jones and how he plans to implement this character in the series. As Oda has once depicted Davy Jones in the SBS of Volume 38. He appears as a very stereotypical Yar me hearties kind of pirate, and he's also a very classic Oda SBS character, which leans a lot more heavily into a comic depiction, and the dialogue Davy Jones is speaking just says, "It's all mine." And Oda drew this in response to a reader asking about the significance of Davy Jones, with Oda adding the following. There are several different accounts, but in general there was a lying, no-good pirate named Davy Jones, a greedy deck chief who was famous for putting all the crew's valuables in his own locker. He was so wicked, even for a pirate, that one day the devil himself cursed Davy to live at the bottom of the sea forever, swabbing the deck of a sunken ship and placing all the sunken treasure in his locker where it would never be seen again. So when pirates say, "Put him in Davy Jones's locker," it means sink him to the bottom of the sea. Take special note of the word devil being used there by Oda. And also this legend is TLDR'd in the One Piece canon by Nico Robin. When Chopper asks who Davy Jones was, Robin responds with, "A pirate from long ago who was cursed by a demon and is said to live deep down on the sea floor. That's the legend. Any sunken ships or treasure get locked away in Davy Jones's locker." Now, important thing here, the word demon that Robin is using here can also be translated as devil, which is a very relevant distinction, because all those with the will of D are constantly labeled as devils. And any time that Oda brings up the idea of a devil, it is usually in connection to them. But something that I haven't seen brought up very much in all of the Rocks hype is the fact that the narrator said that Rocks described himself as a worshipper of Davy Jones. So Rocks marched into the Chamber of Flowers, locked eyes with Emu, which is the only feature that Emu has, and said that he was a Davy Jones worshipper, as if that had some kind of meaning to Emu, and it may very well, as at this stage Emu could be the very literal devil in the world of One Piece. And also the legend of Davy Jones, according to Oda, goes that Davy Jones was cursed by the devil. So if this character did exist in One Piece, Davy Jones may well have a history with Emu, and Davy Jones could have been a victim of the flooding of the Void Century. And so Rocks confronting Emu could be a declaration of revenge on behalf of a figure that he greatly admires. But there is also another option, which is that Davy Jones himself was a devil. And one clue to this that we do have is through the Jolly Roger of the Rocks Pirates, which features a horned skull, a very devilish one, if I do say so myself. And if this endeavor was all in the spirit of Davy Jones, then this could be how Rocks chooses to depict him. However, something that was very quickly spotted by assorted men all over the internet is that the skull in the Jolly Roger features a horn with the now trademark Gear 5th swirl. Which brings us to Joy Boy, the only person other than Luffy confirmed to have been capable of producing an aesthetic form of this nature through the power of fictional fruit. Long before chapter 1155 came out, it had been theorized that the will of D could stand for Davy Jones. But this idea has now evolved into Davy Jones being the real name of Joy Boy, which when you think about it, Joy Boy, it's much more of a title. And the idea from here is that Joy Boy and Davy Jones are two sides of the same coin, the same person, in very much the same way that the sun god Nika has two sides, a liberator and a destroyer. The idea here being that Joy Boy is a fractured legend. Some people remember him as the Joy Boy, the first pirate, the liberator, generally good dude, whereas other people remember his real name, Davy Jones, the destroyer, the wicked, the evil, and also potentially first pirate. In the same sort of way that Luffy has a fractured image in the world currently. Those who have met him know him as a liberator, whilst those who only hear about Luffy in the news know him as an evil, devilish destroyer. And in this case, it may explain the divide within the D clan itself, as Rocks D. Zebek has been labeled as the greatest rival of Goldie Roger, with the potentially fun idea of both of them having been inspired by different readings of the same historical figure whose will they may both carry, which would make a Davy back fight between the two of them an especially noteworthy event. In chapter 1096, we were treated to the story of how the God Valley incident began, which essentially boiled down to Ginny summoning the Rocks pirates by broadcasting the whereabouts of certain prizes, which attracted Rocks to the island, which attracted Roger to the island, and when Roger arrived, he stated, "It's been a whole year. Do you have any idea how I felt all this time?" And Scopogaban replies, "No special privileges for the captain here, Roger." So the whole crew is determined to confront the Rocks pirates for some reason. That some reason may be Shaki at this stage. We don't know. But what we do know is that these two crews have had an encounter where Rocks got the better of Roger, which could have been an all-out clash like the Roger pirates frequently had against the Whitebeard pirates in later days, but they were much more friendly and more mentally on the same wavelength, whereas Rocks was not. He was a very agenda-driven individual, constantly on or in search of the pieces that he needed to bring his ambition to fruition. And to illustrate this point, Rocks didn't randomly stumble upon pirates and just decide to challenge them if he saw someone he kinda liked. He was a lot more precisely methodical than that. During the flashback in chapter 1155, we see Rocks holding a stack of bounty posters, and in a way, you could see Rocks as the world's most prolific bounty hunter, because what he did right, very clever, he let the world government do all of his research for him. And after the world government had deemed who the most threatening pirates on the planet were at any given point, Rocks would go out and try to recruit them, more often than not successfully via fun games. And if you look carefully in this chapter, you can even see the order in which it appears that Rocks recruited his first 3 crew members. You've got someone who appears to be Shiki at the top of his bounty stack in the first panel, with the next poster shown being Whitebeard, followed by Don Marlin, the gangster of West Blue, and the 4th bounty is unfortunately cut off, but it's either going to be one of Buckingham Stussy, Wang Zi, or Gunsley the Smuggler. But my greater point is that if Rocks came into conflict with Roger, it is because Mr. Rocks wanted something, and his established method for getting what he wanted was to commence a Davy backfight. But as explained to us in chapter 306, a Davy backfight is a contest for crew members. So if we went down this road, Rocks would have likely been searching for someone rather than something. Alternatively, Roger could have approached Rocks for a Davy backfight, searching for a someone, potentially a Shaki. But the traditional Davy backfight also comes with the option of stripping a crew of their Jolly Roger, which to many people who go through One Piece for the first time doesn't sound all that horrible, but symbolically this is far, far worse than having a crew member taken, as the way that Oda describes this act is to destroy the very spirit of the crew. And if I was to equate this to ship terminology, think of it as killing the Klabauterman that inhabits the Going Merry. Yes, it would still be functional as a ship with its wood and stuff, but it would have lost the core spirit guiding it. But given that the Roger pirates still exist in their current form at the time of God Valley, we would have no choice but to assume that if Roger did lose a Davy backfight to Rocks, then it was a crew member who was taken, or even multiple crew members depending on how many coin games were played. And the choices for who that could have been are quite wide-ranging. At the moment, the confirmed Roger pirates that we see with the crew at God Valley are Roger, Rayleigh, Scopogaban, Millie Pine, UA Seagull, and Spencer. So everyone else is up for grabs. And it may even have been a member who did not return to the Roger pirates out of some sort of reverence for Davy Jones, as the rules of the game do state that crew members 1 can only be regained through another Davy backfight, which sadly would not be possible with the alleged death of Rocks and the dissolution of his crew. But the other obvious question to ask is that if Roger didn't challenge Rocks, and Rocks wanted someone from Roger, why would Roger accept that challenge? What would Roger want in return, if that makes sense? And the answer to that could be potentially nothing. Currently, Luffy is following the path of Roger. He is retreading a lot of the same ground, quite literal ground, as well as hitting similar developmental character beats and working towards the same secret dream that he and Roger share. And in Luffy's case, he was tricked into accepting a Davy backfight. But also, Luffy was having the time of his life the whole way through. And Roger could have been the same. If Rocks really is more of a classical scallywaggical pirate, then he could have tricked Roger into participating, or Roger could have just done the Luffy thing of being wildly reckless, because at the time it sounded like the most fun thing to do. And in the end, what I'm hoping is that all of this comes back around in the modern day, and in the near future we see a scenario where the Straw Hats and the Blackbeard pirates engage in the highest stakes Davy backfight that the world has ever seen to decide who will claim the One Piece.